Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to CNE Sales Monthly Webinar Series. I'm Jeff Butler, the Technical Manager here. Today's webinar is titled Siemens Smart Access Module, the simple way to commission a G120 or V20 drive. And it'll focus on the simplicity of using a web server to configure the Siemens drives. Our presenter today is John Pipkin, Automation, Motion, and Control Specialist at CNE. John's been with us for almost 3 years now, and he's been working in the field of industrial automation his entire career. He holds a BSEET from the University of Tennessee at Martin. Just a few housekeeping items before we start. If you have questions throughout this webinar, use the control panel tool, and there's a question box there. If you don't see that, click on the red arrow at the top of that box and it'll open it up. Type in your questions there and we'll answer them at the end of the session. If you're trying to take notes during the presentation, you don't have to. You're going to receive a link to the recording, and so you'll be able to go back and review it later on if you'd like to. Be sure to attend next month's webinar. It's going to be hosted by Doug Hammer of CNE. Doug is our controls product specialist. His topic will be Siemens Sirius 3RW5 Soft Starter, the next generation. And that webinar will be hosted on October 11th at 10:30. I'll now turn today's webinar over to John.
Good morning, everybody. Again, like Jeff says, we're going to be covering the Smart Access module for the V20 and G120 drives today. I'm John Pipkin. As Jeff said, I'm also the Automation, Motion, and Control Specialist here in Nashville, kind of holding up the technical responsibilities on the south end of the CNE territory. So to get started today, I'm going to do a bit of an overview of the V20 drive and the G120, kind of highlight, where they fit, and then we'll get into this Smart Access and how to come in and do some commissioning. So first we'll talk about the V20. V20 is a pretty basic drive for basic applications. Volts, hertz type mode control, does not do any kind of vector control. So typically you'll see these in pumping, ventilation, and compressing, maybe some moving applications where speed isn't super critical, belt conveyors, roller conveyors, chain conveyors, and some processing, where you got a single drive, maybe with some mechanical interlocks or mechanical coupling between different motors. So you got everything has to mechanically follow the same speed. Again, it's not super tight speed regulation. It comes in these flavors, kind of the voltages, single phase, 200 to 240 volt, fractional horsepower to 4 horsepower, and then 3-phase, 380 to 480 volt, half up to 40 horsepower. Again, you see highlighted there, it is for linear volts hertz, quadratic volts hertz, but all tied back to just volts hertz mode. Flux current control gives you a little better control, but still no real torque control. Built into the V20 is this basic operator panel, or the BOP is common term in Siemens. Again, it's integrated into the front of the drive. Before this Smart Access module, this was the only way to really parameterize the V20. So, pushing buttons, there is no software for it. There is a way to replicate through an SD card and a module, but that's just going to copy parameters from one drive to another with the exact settings. Also through the BOP, you notice you can put this in hand mode and actually run the drive from that, but we'll also show you how to do that with the Smart Access module. Now we'll move on to the G120 and G120C, which are very similar drives. You'll find these again in pumping, ventilation, compressing, but these get a little more complicated and more complex applications. Some of the moving stuff, cranes, cement mixing, chemical industry, more in the textiles and machine drives. So more capable, more features in the G120 or G120C. The G120 is a modular type drive, so you've got a PM or power module, so that's going to be, the power generation piece of the drive. You've got a selection of control units, which can give you different capabilities or different functionality from the drive. And then you've got this operator panel. Again, we see the BOP, basic, or IOP, which is intelligent operator panel. Here's some of the power modules. This slide shows PM240. This slide's a bit dated, so actually most of the 240s have been replaced by the 240-2, just a newer generation of the drive. Here it's in single phase, 200 to 240 volt, 3/4 to 5 horsepower range, 3 horsepower in the 200 to 240 volt, 3/4 to 10 horse, and then at the 480 volt, 380 to 480 volt range, 3/4 up to 200 horsepower in the PM240-2. Above the 200 horsepower range, we revert back to the PM240 for now. Then there's also the PM250, which actually is capable of doing some regenerative energy back on the line side up to 100 horsepower. Then here's some common control units. PM230P-2 is the traditionally a pump and fan control unit. You see some of these building type networks that it can do: BACnet, CAN open, Profibus, Profinet. Also, CU240B-2 is going to be your basic 240 control unit. This is more of your traditional industrial applications. The B only comes with USS Modbus or Profibus. Then we get up to the CU240E-2. E is where Ethernet would come in potentially, or some other industrial networks. Again, with USS, USS is a Siemens serial network for drives that they've had this pretty low speed, or Modbus, Profibus, and then Profinet or Ethernet IP, where your Ethernet flavors come in. Then the CU250-S also brings in the capability of closing the loop from an encoder for speed loop. So you can get the closed loop vector control, as well as some basic positioning with this drive or with this control unit. Now we move on to the G120C, very much like the G120, but this one is compact or complete, if you will. So the control unit and power module are built into one unit. And then also it's got this operator panel, the BOP or the IOP, that can be used with it. So also with the C, you've got some of these same networks to pick from: CAN open, USS or Modbus, Ethernet IP, Profinet, Profibus are available with the C. Here's the big difference with the C is it's pretty much limited in range. 380 to 480 volts, 3-phase, 3/4 to 25 horsepower. Again, the G120 and G120C can do the volts hertz type control, but also your open loop vector control. And then the CU250 we talked about can do the closed loop vector. So this slide really highlights some of the network differences and capabilities of the drive. You see the V20 there at the left. So the V20 only has the capability of Modbus or USS protocol. G120C, we see a lot of the industrial protocols: Profibus, DP, Profinet, CAN open, Ethernet IP, Modbus, RTU, or USS. Then the G120 also, with that CU230, can do some of these, the building automation, the BACnet, Siemens FLN type protocols. And here's just a highlight of the G120 and G120C. Again, these are before the Smart Access module came out. These were the ways to configure the drive, either to this basic operator panel, through this intelligent operator panel, which is a little more capable, has some wizards that don't exist in the BOP that make it a little easier to do some configuration. Then also with the G120 and G120Cs, there's a couple different software pieces that you can use. Starter has been the drive software that's been out for a number of years, coming out with the MicroMaster drives, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 years ago, somewhere in that ballpark. And then there's a fairly new Start drive, which integrates with the TIA portal. So it's been out about 5 years, and they keep adding to it. But again, for the 120 and 120C, those softwares exist that you can use to configure it. All right, that's enough of just a brief overview of the two drives and what their capabilities are. So back into the Smart Access module, which is really what the focus of this webinar is about. So this shows you a picture of a V20 drive. The module on the front of the drive, where it says danger there, is actually the Smart Access module. It plugs into the front of the drive. So it is a Wi-Fi access point as well as web server. And then you see the three devices behind the laptop, the smartphone, or the pad there or smart tablet that actually just hosts the web page. So it looks virtually the same and the same functionality from any of these devices. So here's an up-close look at this Smart Access module for the V20. It does look slightly different than the G120, but very similar in functionality. So you see there the Wi-Fi indicator. It shows if you're Wi-Fi connected. There is a reset switch, so paperclip or whatever to go in there to reset the module. That would also reset the password to the module. And then there's an on-off switch there that you can turn on and off the Wi-Fi. So here again, another kind of up close of the drive with the Smart Access module, and then the three different devices showing the web page from the device. Again, it's a web server, so there's no special apps to have to download or have. Typically, I'm going to use Firefox or Chrome or something like, or even Internet Explorer. So kind of an up close look at what the web pages are. This would be a snapshot from a smartphone. So these things are kind of highlighted, numbered. Number one is going to show inverter status. Number two there kind of underlines if you've got a drive fault or a drive warning, that would be highlighted. We'll see some of that when we get into some live connection with the drive. Number three is quick commissioning. Quick commissioning is where you're going to come in and set up the drive initially, motor parameters and the basic parameters in the drive. Number four, there's parameters list that shows you the full parameters of the drive that you can get access to and look at or change, modify. Jog's going to be able to put it in kind of a manual control mode from the software. You can get control from the software for the drive and run the motor. Monitoring is going to show you a basic list of parameters that you want to monitor in a normal drive, voltages and currents and speeds and such. Diagnostics is going to highlight if you have drive warnings or errors and what they are, help do some troubleshooting. Number 8 is backup and restore, so you can actually back up drive parameters onto the Smart Access module, save them there, and then reuse them later or download to another drive. 11 here shows some web access settings. 12 is going to show some inverter data identification of what the drive is. And then 13, if you're doing this from a smartphone, you can actually click there and actually call in drive tech support with the built-in link. To the left there, 9 and 10 just shows you a quick menu, and then 10 is the arrow up is basically back page or backspace, so you go back up from one level up from where you are in the menu. So just to highlight some of these in the V20, if we do this, the wrench looking icon is a quick commissioning. It's going to ask you the question, do you want to start commissioning, yes or no? If you answer yes, it's going to give you the second question, do you want to perform a factory reset? Again, if it's a brand new drive, you might not have to do that, but I'd recommend going ahead and doing the factory reset. Click yes, and then you go to the next for quick commissioning, and that's basically the parameters it wants you to populate, which is mainly motor data right from the nameplate of the motor. So next steps in the V20 quick commissioning, you've got some macros to choose from. There's several different macros available. Cn is going to be your connection type or how your I/O is connected, and then your application is going to be, you know, what type of motor application are you doing? Is it a pump? There's some fan, compressor, or conveyor. Just populate some parameters in the drive based on those settings. So connection macro, here's basically the 11 that are available. For our example, we're going to use Cn002 because I have a speed potentiometer for speed reference and then a start signal to the drive. So from Cn002, here's where it's expecting the terminals to be pre-configured for the terminals from the macro. You see your analog in. It shows a speed pot between 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2, and 5. You got a digital input for on-off. Digital input 1 is on-off, 2 is reverse, 3 is fault acknowledged, 4 would be a jog. Also notice this jumper here between 12 and 14. The jumper 12 is going to reference where it's going to be a PNP or an NPN. So if I connect it to 0, I'm using PNP or 24-volt source as the input. And then this kind of shows you the parameters that populate when Cn002 is selected. So you're looking at terminal as command source, analog as speed set point, function of the digital inputs. Number 1 is on off. Number 2 would be set to 12 for reverse, but that's the parameters that it populates for you. Then their application macros. For our example, we're going to use APO20 for our simple fan application. Then here's the parameters that APO20 is going to show. Reverse inhibited. It's going to be a quadratic volts hertz setup. Flying starts enabled. Fault acknowledgement would be an auto restart. So just, here's your ramp up and down time that sets based on common for a pump. Minimum frequency of 20, ramp up time 10 seconds, ramp down time 20 seconds. So the next icon is parameters. Basically, if you click that, you're going to see a list of parameters. You do have some filter stuff here that you can come see different groups of parameters if you want through the funnel. After you change parameters, you might want to come save EEPROM. If any of you guys are familiar with Siemens drives, that's always a big thing, save RAM to ROM, and that's what this would do. If you don't save it to EEPROM and you power cycle, it reverts to what used to be in ROM or what was in ROM before you change any of the RAM parameters, if you will. So very important to do that in a Siemens VFD. Next, we'll look at jog, and basically this is what this jog screen looks at. You see it shows you what the actual speed, torque, current, and overload percentage is. At the bottom, you can see get control. So if you want the software to take control of the drive, you'll select get control. Then you've got options for jog mode. Jog is going to run it based on the icon selection, forward or reverse at 5 hertz. Or in hand, you can actually come and in the slider give it a a preset or a speed command, and then there's a start-stop button that'll pop up on the screen at that point. And I'll show you that in a minute. Monitoring page is going to show you these parameters, basically similar to what we saw on the jog screen, but this is going to be, when it's normally running, what the set point is, what the output frequency is, actual speed and RPM, actual power in kilowatts, motor temp, output voltage, motor current, and volts DC would be your DC bus voltage in an inverter status. Next, we've got diagnostics, and that's kind of 3 pages in one. So here's one selector at the top. If it's off, it displays the active faults. If it's on to green, displays all faults and alarms. So these are past faults. So again, any of these, like number 3, if we click it, it'll pop up this menu to the right that kind of gives you more details about what that fault is. So that's faults and alarms. At the bottom of that screen, you got the 3 dots. So each of those represent a different page. So if we click in the middle, it's going to pop up this diagnostics page. It's going to show us analog input, output, and digital input, output status. Very handy for troubleshooting to know, what's my speed pot actually set to voltage-wise, or what digital inputs are on. I think this one's on. Is it really on? Then the 3rd page shows us a status word back from the drive that shows you 16 bits basically of information about what's going on in the drive. Then the last menu we're going to talk about is backup and restore. The backup icon here, it generates a default file name of the date. You can change that to give it more meaning. You can back up all parameters or my parameters, and then say backup, and it's going to back it up onto this Smart Access module, which can hold 20 parameter sets. So again, on the backup page, you've got 2 dots. Click the 2nd dot. It's going to be your restore. Restore, again, it shows you the list of files on the Smart Access module. Then you can upload that existing file to the drive from there. That would be good if you want to replicate the files, or somebody's been playing with parameters and you're not sure how it's set. This would let you go back to, something you had stored as a backup. So also here we've got this upload, so that if you're connected with a computer, it'll let you upload parameter sets into the computer and back them up. All right, now I want to demonstrate the this drive. So I'm going to try to go to my base screen. Hopefully you guys can see this. Here's my Wi-Fi connection. So I'm going to click. If you can't see this, there in the Wi-Fi, there's a V20 Smart Access. Shows already connected. I'm going to disconnect. Then I'm going to connect. So now, I don't know if you can see that, but it actually asks for a password. My password for my demo was CNE Sales, so something easy. At that point, we'll go open Firefox. So hopefully you can see that. And by default, the IP address, once you connect, is 192.168.1.1. So we click that. It's going to open up the web page. So now you see at the top left, inverter ready. Here's our menu: quick commissioning, parameters, jog, monitoring, diagnostics, backup and restore. So first we'll go do quick commissioning. Do you want to start quick commissioning? I'll say yes. Do you want to perform factory reset? Yes, I do. So quickly successful. So again, here's our parameters in the V20. They're going to vary slightly from what the G120 is. It's a little more, again, capable drive, so there's more choices. For this, I've got a Siemens motor on my demo, so I'm just going to use North American, but I'm going to keep it in kilowatts because that's going to match up better with what I see on my nameplate. Rated motor voltage is 230 volts. Motor current. So here, if we click on the number, here's the pop-up again. If you're thinking about a tablet or a smartphone, it's going to pop up at the bottom. So I'm going to put 0.97, then arrow down to close that, because this is a 0.97 amp motor. It's a 0.21 kilowatt. So cosine is on this motor is 0.75. It is a 60, I'm going to set it up for 60 hertz, and at 60 hertz, it's a 1650 RPM motor. So there's basically the information off the nameplate of the motor. Again, you got 3 dots, but next is going to take you to the next page. All right, again, we're going to pick Cn002 because I've got, you know, some push buttons tied to this drive, a selector switch actually. So I'm going to select PN and NPN. So if you click this right arrow, this shows you what parameters are going to be set based on this. So Cn002, make sure it's selected. Next. Here's our application macro. Again, I'm going to do an AP20. If you click the arrow, it's going to kind of show you what these parameters are set up. So notice we got a negative frequency set point inhibit, so it can't roll backwards, if you will. Or the drive can't command the motor to run backwards. So now we have commission complete. Do you want to write the parameter settings to the inverter? Yes. So we talked about RAM to ROM earlier. That's what this is doing. So if you go through that smart commissioning, quick commissioning, you don't have to do RAM to ROM. All right. So here's my parameters. This is going to be the parameters tab. I'm going to go up a level. Here again, parameters. We can use the funnel and say all parameters. So here's the list of all your parameters as they currently stand. Again, if you change parameters here, make sure you do RAM to ROM, otherwise you'll lose your changes after a power cycle. So here's jog mode. I'm going to take control of the drive. This is get control button. I'm going to say jog. I'm going to hold the jog button down. And it's going at 150 RPMs. You probably can't hear that, but I can hear on this end. All right, stop, go reverse. Notice actual speed is 0 because it's trying to make it run negative or in reverse. So that's jog. Hand mode I'll select. So here we've got the speed slider. So we pick the speed we want to run. I'm going to just go 30 hertz. And hit start. And at the top of the screen here, you can see actual speed in RPMs. So 900, half of 1800. Actual torque, actual current to the motor, and overload utilization where we are right now. So that's the jog mode. Stop. So we also have to make sure we free control to give up control from this jog screen. It's going to make sure it's good. A little safety warning. All right, now I'm going to go back up the level. Next is monitoring. So same parameters we showed in the presentation. So I've got a potentiometer, so we see the set point here. I can turn the set point down, so 0 hertz, or I can scroll up to 60, or just shy. So again, I'm going to go to about 30, and then I'm going to start it with my selector switch. So again, we can see set point, output frequency takes a little time to ramp up. Remember, 10-second accel time. Actual speed in RPMs, power in kilowatts, motor temperature, the output voltage. So in a volts to hertz ratio there, you got the voltage increases with the frequency and decreases with the frequency. All right, so we'll stop that drive. Go up again. Here's your diagnostic view. Currently, no faults or alarms. Again, we got the 3 dots at the bottom, so I'm going to go to the middle one. So this shows our analog. Again, speed pot is tied to AI1, so I can drop the voltage with it or increase the voltage. Analog out isn't configured, so it's not outputting anything at the moment. Digital input 1, again, I can turn it on. We'll see DI1 turn on. So very handy troubleshooting from that. Next is also our status bits we talked about. Actually, so 27 different bits of information about what's going on. Inverter ready to run, inverter running. Again, I'll start it. And we'll see ready to run and running come true. So just some status. We're not going to dive into that at that point, but those are there if you need them. So that is the V20. So now we'll start talking about the G20. I'm going to turn off the V20 and turn on my G120 so they're ready when we go into the drive to do the demo. Okay. So G120 Smart Access, this shows you a picture of what the module looks like. Make sure I got the right screen selected. And then, you know, a smartphone, kind of what it's going to look like on a smartphone. So here again, Smart Access module. Here's the drives it can work with, any of the G120Cs or the G120s. It lists the CU230P and the CU240E as the drives it'll function with. So take note, some of these drives, some of these control units can have some safety functions. You cannot commission safety functions or any of the special features in the CU250, closed loop vector, and those things with this module. It would require the software starter or start drive to do that. But for many applications, it is very useful. So up close look of what it looks like. Again, you've got an inverter COM indicator, green, that shows you communication from the access module to the drive. Wi-Fi indicator light when you got Wi-Fi connected or not. Reset switch here, you got to hold this in for a certain amount of time to do the reset. Again, that's going to reset the password of this module. And then the WLAN button is going to be able to enable or disable Wi-Fi. So we can turn off Wi-Fi with that button by holding in, I think it's 3 seconds. So if you didn't see my Wi-Fi connection earlier, which I'm afraid you didn't, this is kind of what it looks like in your Wi-Fi on your laptop, whatever. It's going to show this G120 Smart Access and a number. So that's how you connect to that access point. Here again, what the web pages are going to look like on a smartphone, on a tablet, or on a laptop. Again, it's a web server, so there's no applications to download and install. Again, same HTTP or IP address 192.168.1.1. So again, you can only connect to one drive at a time where this module is plugged into. So just to make that clear. Here's what the web page looks like on the G120. Again, very much like the V20. Again, same menu structure: quick commissioning, parameters, jog, monitoring, diagnostics, and backup and restore. So we're going to go through quick commissioning on the G120 in the PowerPoint just to kind of show some differences between it and the V20. There are a lot more choices here. So quick commissioning, and then here's your selection: reset to factory settings, modify existing, or exit quick commissioning. If we say reset, it'll go through the reset process. Then it's going to pop up your application class. Again, this is slightly different from the V20, more options. You got standard drive control, dynamic drive control, or expert, where you can come actually select some different parameters. Here kind of shows you standard drive control, so very little torque control, not tightly speed regulated in those. Again, that's for ramp up times greater than 1 second. Okay. And then dynamic is going to be more vector control, so you tighten up your speed loop. You can do some torque limiting, a little better torque control with dynamic. So dynamic, you can choose standard or dynamic, which is going to preset some of these parameters. That makes it a little easier. Or you can do expert, which you come in and you've got different control modes. Here you see volts to hertz on the left. Looks very much like the standard, where encoderless vector shows more like what dynamic is going to be. So just depends on how you want to set it up. Expert does give you some more choices, but you really got to know more about what you're doing to pick and choose those. So if we pick dynamic or standard, you're going to next come up to this motor data pop-up, voltage, supply voltage of the motor. Again, your IEC, NEMA or NEMA with the SI units. Again, I've got a Siemens motor here, so I'm going to use the SI units. We've got motor data entry. There's manual, which means if you select manual, you'll pop up in the menu to the left where you put motor current, motor power, voltage, frequency, and then there's a selection of ventilation. So typically we're going to be naturally ventilated. If you select automatic, that's going to look for a part number of a Siemens motor and populate this information based on that part number of the motor. So there's a catalog in the drive that knows these Siemens motors. So again, manual, you're going to enter data off of a motor nameplate, where the other, you're just going to pick the part number and populate it automatically. I assume most of you are not probably going to have Siemens motors, so we just do the manual. And that's what I'm going to step through in the example. So next, you're going to have IO configuration. We've got some examples of what we're going to do. Here's the different options we have from 7, which is field bus. For our example, we're going to do 12, which again is standard IO with analog. If you click the arrows, it's going to show you what that's going to look like, what parameters or what the digital inputs and such are set to. Again, we're selecting 12, so that's going to be standard IO with analog set point. Here on off is digital input 0, reverse is digital input 1, fault acknowledge is digital input 2, so very much like the V20 setup was. We do have analog input 0 as our speed set point. So that's what's going to be there. And then this is kind of the terminal layout of the drive as well, and where the wires are needing to land for that. I'll highlight this jumper between terminal 28 to 69. A lot of people forget to include that, so don't forget that jumper. So again, that's our old setup. There's some more parameters: minimum speed, max speed, ramp up time, downtime. Then we get to pick standard drive, dynamic start, or heavy duty start. And that's just more, what kind of loads on the drive and the motor. Next is optimization. We can inhibit optimization. Motor ID at standstill. Motor ID only at standstill, only at rotate. The first was standstill and rotate. So these are the drive's going to basically ping the motor or apply voltage to the motor and make some, resistance type measurements and set some parameters accordingly. So typically in the G120 we'd recommend at least some type of motor ID. Typically I'm going to do only at standstill, and that's what I'll show you in the example. Then we'll complete the quick commissioning wizard. You can go to the jog page here or complete, either one. Again, here's the menu, what it's going to look like in the web page, and I'll start the demonstration there. So hopefully you can see us again. So here's my Wi-Fi. I don't think you can see it, but anyway, here's my G120 Smart Access. Connect. And CNE sales. One, the newer firmware, the G120 Smart Access module makes include a digit.
Excuse me,
Yes.
we're not seeing your your browser.
Okay, hang on. I haven't connected it. So I'm just connecting to the Wi-Fi, and I can't show that on the screen, unfortunately. So here's the browser. Again, so 192.168.1.1. You can see it now, Jeff?
Yep, we're back.
So this one takes a little longer to initialize. You'll see this pop up. See top left again, ready for switch on, status of the drive. Top left shows you what model of drive. I've actually got a fail-safe drive I'm showing, but again, I can't do any of the fail-safe parameters or safety parameters through this. So we'll go through a quick commissioning real quick. I'm going to say reset the factory settings. Takes a little longer for the G120 to reset all. Okay, successful. So for this example, I'm going to click dynamic drive control. Again, if you highlight out here and click, it'll show you kind of what that would be used for. Typical applications, typical characteristics and values. There's standard, there's dynamic. Expert's got some selections to make. Oh, cancel expert, so I'm going to do dynamic. Next. Again, NEMA motor, well, I'm going to use SI units just because of what my motor is. Manual. Again, 0.97 amps. 0.21 kilowatts, 1650 RPM, 230 volts, 60 hertz. Motor cooling method is going to be just natural ventilation, so just a standard induction motor. Then go to next. IO configuration, again, I'm going to go to 12. If you click the arrow to the right, it kind of gives you some highlights of what that is going to be set to. So I'm going to go select 12, see the check mark, say OK. Next. So minimum speed, max speed, I'm just going to leave it 0 and 1800. Ramp up time, if I want to change it here to 5 seconds. Ramp down time, 5 seconds. I'm going to reduce my current a little bit, 1.2, because it can cause some issues with my demo just because I don't have a very good voltage source, honestly. So next, I'm going to do dynamic start. Again, this doesn't show you a lot of information, but it's more based on the application. So dynamic start's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do motor ID only at standstill. Complete quick commissioning. So here I'm going to go to jog. Again, I'm going to take control. It's very much like the V20 did. I'm going to go to hand. I'm going to give it a little bit of speed and hold down start. Now, so we see this alarm up here. We're actually in motor ID. You probably can't hear it, but it's actually, I mean, the motor's whining a little bit as it's going through this process. And you'll see this alarm or warning go away when it completes. So the operating motor ID at the top left. Okay, complete. So again, in hand mode, I can give it a speed, say start. I had to stop and then restart. So now it's ramping up to this RPMs. Output torque, current draw from the motor. All right, so I'll stop. I'll free up control. All right. And I'll come up on a level. Other than that, it's very much like the V20. So parameters are going to be in the list. Again, we've got the funnel to filter out some or only see certain ones. You can create a my parameters list too, that if you've got, you know, certain key parameters you want easy access to, you can populate that list. There's parameters. I'll go back into parameters again. If you change something, here's your save as standard parameter set. That's going to do from the RAM to the ROM. I'm not going to apply here just to show you that menu. You already saw the jog. Monitoring again. Again, I'll set my speed pot to a level, and you'll be able to see it's running at reverse. I'll turn on the reverse input. So now it reverses. So just a quick way to come in and do monitoring of the motor, of the drive, speed, frequency, temp, voltage. Diagnostics, again, if we had faults, I can go back to history. But again, no active faults. If there were faults, you can do acknowledge here the same. Again, send email if you've got a mobile device. You can click that and send an email of what the actual fault log is if you need to. Again, the other two pages are analog and digital inputs and outputs. Good monitoring tool or troubleshooting tool if you need. And then the same status bits. And then again, back up and restore. I'll go ahead and give it a name, today's date webinar, and say backup. So this takes a little time, but it's backing up again to the Smart Access module, which can hold 20 parameter sets. Give it a little time. Again, this takes a few seconds, not a long time. unless you're waiting on it, then it seems like it takes forever. Now, for the sake of time, well, okay, here we go. So it takes a little bit of time, a little longer than the V20, more parameters to back up. All right, okay. Next tab, next page over is Restore. Again, you got the ones here highlighted. So you got a little more information about it. And that's where you would say download or upload. It's going to allow you to bring it into the laptop if you're doing it from a laptop to save it on that hard drive. Here's the way to do an XML file to the hard drive as well. And then the last is going to be your shows RAM to ROM or ROM. These also can have an SD card in the G120s and G120Cs that you can back up parameters to. So that's what I've got for today's Smart Access module. Are there any questions, Jeff?
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. I do have a question concerning Arc Flash. How does this help out as far as not having to suit up when it comes to troubleshooting or commissioning a drive, not having to open the control panel?
I would think it'd be very helpful. I mean, so yeah, so you don't have to do that. There is a way to do, basically with the IOP earlier, we showed the door mount mechanism that actually you can mount the IOP or BOP on the outside panel, but you can also plug in this module to that, so that would make it easier access to that without having to open up the panel.
Okay, yeah, seems like it would possibly save some time and also keep somebody out of harm's way from having to get inside a hot panel. Very good. I don't see any other questions that have come through, and so I want to thank everyone for attending today. John, I want to thank you for putting together a nice presentation. Very, very well done. And everyone who attended today will receive a link to the webinar, so you'll be able to go back and review it if you need to. So with that, we'll go ahead and end the webinar, and thank you all very much.